An Introduction to the Science of Hadith by Ibn Salah al-Shahrazuri, 577 to 643, the most influential work on the science of Hadith ever. Another form of transference with licensing is when the teacher transfers his book to the student and licenses him to relate it from him, and then the teacher keeps the book in his possession and does not give it to the student. Because the student does not come into possession of the material he receives and it is absent from him, this form of transference falls short of the previously mentioned ones. It will be permissible for the student to relate the material from the teacher when he takes possession of the book, or a copy collated with it in a fashion that convinces him of its agreement with the material the license covered. However, this is still considered to be a form of licensing lacking actual transference. Thus, transference in a case like this hardly possesses any advantage over a case of licensing a specific text without the act of transference. Indeed, several jurists and legal theorists have concluded that it possesses no special efficacy or benefit. Nevertheless, the expert scholars of Hadith in early and modern times, or at least some of them, believe it to have a considerable advantage. Knowledge belongs to God. Another form of transference without licensing is a student bringing a book or a personal Hadith collection to a teacher and saying, "This is your transmission, so transfer it to me and license me to transmit it." And then the teacher agreeing to this without looking at the text and making certain that he transmitted all of it. This by itself is impermissible and invalid. If the information and the knowledge of the student may be trusted, it is permissible to rely on him in that regard. This is a permissible form of licensing, just as reliance on a student is permissible in recitation to a teacher, to the extent that he may be the one reciting from the original text, when he is someone whose knowledge and religion may be trusted. Abu Bakr al-Khatib, God bless him, said, "If the teacher were to say, 'Transmit the contents of this book from me, if they are my hadith, I am not responsible for any error or misapprehension,' that would be permissible and good, and God knows best." B. Transference without licensing. Here the teacher transfers the book to the student as described above in the beginning, merely saying, "These are my hadith or my audition," without saying, "Transmit it from me," or "I hereby license you to transmit it from me," or something similar. This is a defective form of transference, and transmission by it is not permissible. More than one of the jurists and legal theorists have found fault with the transmitters of hadith who permitted it and allowed transmission by it. Al-Khatib related that a number of scholars regarded it as sound and allowed transmission by it. We will mention God, he is praised and exalted, willing. The opinion of those who permitted transmission on the basis of the teacher's mere declaration to the student that a particular book is what he heard from X. This form of transference is better than the declaration by itself, and it is superior because of the element of transference it contains, since the act of transference itself is not devoid of the implication that the teacher is granting permission to transmit the text. God knows best. Remarks on the way a transmitter should express transference and licensing. It is related that some early scholars and some of those who came after them permitted the unqualified application of "he transmitted to us," haddathana, and "he informed us," akhbarana, to a transmission by transference. That is related from Zuhri, Malik and others. It is in accordance with the doctrine of all the scholars cited above who made presentation by transference coupled with licensing equivalent to audition. Something similar was also related from some people in regard to transmission by licensing. The expert Abu Nu'aym al-Isbahani, the author of many works on the science of hadith, used to apply "he informed us" without qualification to the hadith. He related by license, "We heard that he said, 'When I say he transmitted to us, it is an audition. When I say he informed us without further qualification, it is an instance of licensing, even if I do not say by licensing, by writing, he wrote to me, or he granted me permission to transmit from him.'" The historian Abu Ubaidullah al-Marzubani, the author of a number of works of secular history, used to relate most of the material in his books by license without audition, and he used to say for licensing, "he informed us," without further elucidation. According to Al-Khatib, that was something which Marzubani was criticized for. The sound and preferred view with regards to the majority following practice, which the earnest and scrupulous have adopted, is to forbid the unqualified application of "he transmitted to us," "he informed us," and similar expressions to material received by transference or licensing, and to designate the material with qualified versions of these expressions which indicate the true situation. The transmitter should say "X informed us" or "transmitted to us" by transference and by license, munawalatan wa ijazatan. He informed us by license. He informed us by transference. He informed us by granting permission. Under this permission, under his grant of permission is, one of the things he granted me permission for is, one of the things which he gave me leave to transmit from is, or he should say, X licensed me such and such, X transferred to me, and similar expressions. Some people have designated licensing with terms which have not kept them safe from misrepresentation, or at least a trace of it. Examples are someone saying for licensing, he informed us verbally, when the teacher had only spoken the license out loud to him, or saying, X informed us by writing, or in what he wrote to me, or in his letter, when the teacher had only written out the license for him. Even if a number of modern hadith scholars have employed these expressions technically, they are still not free of a trace of misrepresentation on account of the ambiguity they contain and their similarity to what a student says when the teacher writes the hadith themselves to him in a letter. It is reported that Awza'i designated licensing by saying, he apprised us, and he designated recitation to him by saying, he informed us. Many scholars have adopted the convention of applying he told us without further qualification to licensing. And that is the preference of Walid bin Bakr, the author of the book entitled Al-Wajaza fi Tajweez al-Ijaza, the epitome in declaring licensing to be valid. In earlier times, people viewed he told us as the same as he informed us. The exacting expert Abu Bakr al-Bayhaqi inclined towards this when he used to say, X told me by licensing, and this also complies with the convention of modern scholars. God knows best. We heard that the expert Abu Abdullah al-Hakim, God bless him, said, the view I prefer, and the one which I saw most of the teachers and the authorities of my age following, is for students to say, X told me, for the material which was presented to the transmitter, and which the transmitter orally licensed the student to transmit. The student should say, X wrote to me, for the material which the transmitter sent to him from another city without orally licensing him. We heard that Abu Amr Abi Ja'far ibn Hamdan an-Nisaburi said, I heard my father saying, whenever Bukhari says X said to me, it is an instance of presentation and transference. It is reported that some transmitters expressed licensing by saying X informed us that Y transmitted to him, or Y informed him. We heard that the authority Abu Sulaiman al-Khattabi preferred this or related this. This is terminology that does not even remotely indicate licensing. It is more appropriate for when the student hears only the isnad from the teacher and the teacher licenses to him the text which follows it. The word that in the phrase X informed me that Y informed him implies the presence of a principle of communication, even if the informant treated the material collectively and did not mention it word by word. Stay tuned for many more parts.